And our big focus, Russian President Vladimir Putin has said that he is open to the idea of a 30-day ceasefire in Ukraine, but only on several conditions. In fact, ahead of his meeting with the White House envoy on Thursday, Putin hinted at wanting limits on weapons deliveries to Ukraine during this potential truce, and also pushed for major Western concessions. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called Putin's comments very manipulative, while US President Donald Trump described them as promising. Shortly after Putin's remarks, Donald Trump said that Putin's statement was very promising, but it was not complete, and said he was willing to meet or talk with the Russian leader. Just listen in to what the Russian president had to say, followed by other reactions and also our detailed ground reports from Moscow and from Washington.
Мы согласны с предложениями прекратить боевые действия. Но исходим из того, что это прекращение должно быть таким, которое привело бы к долгосрочному миру и устранило бы первоначальные причины этого кризиса.
Vladimir Putin just said he is open to a ceasefire, but he does still have some concerns. He suggested that you two should speak directly. Do you have plans to speak to him soon? If so, when? Are you confident you can get this across the country?
Sure. He did say that today. It was a very promising statement because other people are saying different things and you don't know if they have anything to really, if they have any meaning or, I don't know. I think some of them were making statements. I don't think they have anything to do with it. No, he put out a very promising statement, but it wasn't complete. And yeah, I'd love to meet with him or talk to him, but we have to get it over with fast.
Ми всі почули з Росії дуже передбачувані, дуже маніпулятивні слова Путіна у відповідь на ідею тиші на фронті. Він фактично готує відмову станом на зараз. Путін, звісно, боїться сказати прямо президенту Трампу, що хоче продовжувати цю війну. Хоче вбивати українців.
Well, some very revealing comments from US President Donald Trump during the course of Thursday about the progression of potential ceasefire discussions with Ukraine and Russia. On Ukraine, he said that really many more details had been discussed and worked out than had previously been thought. Now, up until now, the thinking was that the meeting earlier in the week between the US and Ukraine was really a preliminary meeting to get things started, to get discussions underway. But Donald Trump in the Oval Office on Thursday suggested that they had gone much further than that they were advanced in discussing exactly which territory Ukraine would hang on to and which territory it would lose. He also said that the issue of NATO membership had been discussed, making it clear that the US is keeping to its position of NATO membership under Donald Trump being a complete non-starter. So that is not something that Ukraine will be getting as part of these discussions. Donald Trump also had some insight on the comments that we heard on Thursday from Russia's leader, Vladimir Putin. He spoke about an idea of getting good signals from the Russian leader. He said he was hopeful that Russia would do the right thing. And he also said that many of the things that President Putin had said so far were promising, but he did say that they were incomplete. He said that he would be willing to meet the Russian president, either some face-to-face meeting or potentially just speaking on the phone. But I think it's interesting to note the difference of opinion and language that the Ukrainian leader, Volodymyr Zelensky, and the US leader, Donald Trump, used about President Putin's language. Donald Trump seems to be talking up the deal. He seems very optimistic that what we're hearing from Moscow could get all sides to the negotiating table. But by contrast, Ukraine's leader said that President Putin's language was manipulative, and he even suggested that more sanctions should be placed on Russia as a result of what we've heard and as a way to try and get Moscow to the negotiating table. So things are progressing, the US continuing to play this middleman to try and broach the topic of a ceasefire and bring both sides to the negotiating table. But despite the progress that seems to have been made this week, it still seems as if we are a long way off a full resolution to this conflict. Nick Harper, NDTV, Washington.
Russia says it favors a ceasefire in Ukraine, but notes it should lead to a lasting settlement and address the root causes of the conflict. That's according to President Vladimir Putin, who commented on the US proposed 30-day truce. Putin said Ukraine could use this time to rearm and conduct a mobilization, and added that many more details of the ceasefire should be worked out, including control and verification. He also stressed that Russia holds the initiative in the battlefield, with Russian troops advancing on all directions. Putin confirmed Moscow is prepared to negotiate the next steps towards ending the conflict and reaching acceptable agreements based on the rapidly evolving situation on the ground, which is shifting in Russia's favor. He also said that Russia maintains full control over the situation in the Kursk region, with Ukrainian troops now isolated and either dying or surrendering. Those issues are being discussed with the American representatives, as Steve Witkoff is in Moscow for high-level talks, and the Kremlin did not rule out the possibility of a conversation between himself and the US President Donald Trump. Dasha Cherneshova, NDTV, Moscow.
In fact, Russian President Vladimir Putin, in his first public remarks on Ukraine's willingness to negotiate a ceasefire, expressing gratitude to world leaders, including US President Donald Trump and our Prime Minister Narendra Modi, as well as Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, he has thanked them for their efforts in addressing the war. Listen in.
As for Ukraine's preparedness to cease fire, well, let me tell you, as I see it. But first of all, I would like to start with words of gratitude to the President of the United States, Mr. Trump, for paying so much attention to the Ukraine settlement. All of us have a lot on our plates, but many state leaders, the Chairman of the Chinese People's Republic, the Prime Minister of India, President of Brazil and South African Republic all pay a lot of attention and devote a lot of time to this issue, and we are thankful to them.
Well, some continue to argue that accepting the idea of a ceasefire is not accepting a ceasefire, and as predicted, Russia is delaying the entire process. But for further clarity, we have with us senior journalist Spencer Critchley. As always, Spencer, thanks so much for making time for us. Some analysts have called Putin's demands maximalist. Would you argue that they signal that Moscow could be slow-walking negotiations, biding for time as its troops make battlefield progress?
Well, yes, you absolutely have to assume that. With Putin, you always have to assume bad faith. He keeps teaching us over and over and over again, you cannot trust me. He doesn't just lie repeatedly, he performs his contempt for the truth. It's kind of typical of the fascist totalitarian that he is. Truth is very dangerous to totalitarians, so they're constantly looking for ways to destroy faith in the truth. More specifically here, in Ukraine, I believe Putin has already violated 25 previous ceasefire agreements. This idea even of negotiating with Ukraine about the invasion of Ukraine and the murder of its civilians and the abduction of its children and the commission of war crimes, the idea that this is somehow a negotiation as opposed to trying to expel that invader, it's kind of similar to imagine if violent thugs invaded one's house, murdered part of your family, and when the police arrived, they said, okay, well, both sides have points to make here. Let's sit down and negotiate.
Absolutely. In fact, that is an argument many are asserting. So by avoiding an outright rejection of Trump's ceasefire proposal, would you say Putin appears to be balancing between not actually openly rebuffing Trump's push for peace while also imposing his own stringent demands?
Again, I guess if I were going to give Putin any credit at all, it would be that I think he is way better at this than Donald Trump is. And I say that with the greatest regret as an American. So I don't imagine for a second that he thinks he's conceding anything to Trump. I think he thinks that he's controlling this negotiation. And for Trump to describe this response as promising, it's promising nothing. It just looks like yet another example of Trump's almost childlike naivety. He loves to present himself as the great deal maker, but he keeps being played for a fool in deal after deal.
As always, Spencer, thank you so much for joining us with your views. We will, of course,
pleasure.
revert you for regular updates. By the way, US President Donald Trump welcomed NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte to Washington amid concerns over his pivot towards Russia. The pair actually discussed Greenland, with Trump again advocating US annexation for security reasons. You must note that the chairman of Denmark's Defense Committee has criticized NATO Secretary General for joking with Donald Trump about Greenland following a meeting between the two leaders, during which Trump said the annexation of the island will happen. And Donald Trump's administration also asked the Supreme Court in a series of emergency appeals to allow him to move forward with plans to end birthright citizenship, elevating a fringe legal theory that several lower courts in the US have resoundingly rejected already. By the way, in news just coming in from the US, an American Airlines plane caught fire while sitting at a gate at Denver International Airport, prompting slides to be deployed so passengers could actually evacuate quickly. These are visuals coming in from Denver at the moment. In fact, visuals, photos posted showed passengers standing on a plane's wing as smoke surrounded the aircraft, as you can see. Fortunately, no injuries were reported and firefighters put out the blaze by the evening. This is what authorities have confirmed. Well, with that, let's turn our attention now to Canada. Mark Carney, the former governor of the Bank of England, has a new role, saving his country from becoming America's 51st state. He will be sworn in at a time Canadians are worried that the tariffs could push their country into recession, and also how the rich minerals and resources in the country could attract unwanted attention from Donald Trump. My colleague Maha Siddiqui has been tracking the latest updates for us. She joins us live at the moment. Maha, do Canadians think Mark Carney is the man who could save Canada from Trump? What can Canada actually expect from its next Prime Minister?
Well, at least for the moment, the people are showing faith, though. Let me remind you that this election or selection of Mark Carney is only by his party mates. That means that members of the Liberal Party have elected him, but in overwhelming numbers, almost 86% voting for him to replace Justin Trudeau and become the leader of the Liberal Party. And by that means, he has now become the Prime Minister and will be sworn in as the Prime Minister of Canada on Friday at 11 Eastern Time at the Rideau Hall. But it has been noticed that ever since Justin Trudeau stepped down, the Liberal Party has managed to catch up in the opinion polls with the Conservatives. So they are now neck and neck. And the chances of Mark Carney, if Canada goes in for polls in the next few months, seem to be very high to return as the Prime Minister. And therefore, there are speculations that Mark Carney might ask for a snap polls immediately after being sworn in as the Prime Minister, and would not want to wait for the Parliament session to start, where they will have to face the vote of confidence. But the fact that the polls, opinion polls for the Liberals have improved is because of the situation with the United States. Many also believe that Mark Carney, who's an economist, who has been the former governor of Bank of Canada and Bank of England, is best placed to pull the country out of this terrible crisis that they are facing because of the tariff threats from the United States, specifically from the Donald Trump administration.
As always, Maha, thank you so much for joining us with the lowdown from Vancouver. Well, news and updates continue in a moment right here on NDTV. We're slipping into a very short break for now. Welcome back. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has announced that NHS England will be abolished, bringing the National Health Service back under direct government control. Thousands of jobs will be cut after the British Prime Minister's announcement. Radhika Iyer has more on this for us.
British Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer's decision to scrap NHS England comes with mixed reactions that has been received by Britons here. I'm coming to you from London, where there are mixed reactions over two matters. One, what this means to the people living in Britain, and two, whether it indeed means savings for the UK government. Giving you a little bit of perspective, way back in 2013, the Conservative Party then brought in NHS England, which was introduced mainly to allow NHS England to work at an arm's length from the government. Now, Sir Keir Starmer says that that's going to be brought back to the control by the government, so that by basically taking over the democracy or the bureaucracy of running NHS, that would mean better efficiency, and that, he claims, would also mean costs. Many have asked, what does this mean for the people at NHS? Does it mean job losses? Does it mean a change in an overall? The answers to that we don't know just yet, given the announcement has only come in early March. But this clearly indicates that the transition of NHS England to the government, the ministerial, particular ministerial aspect, could take up to 2 years.